You'll remove that swing, Daniel. 10 days. Non-compliance means daily fines. Patricia Hensley's voice cut like steel as she stood at the foot of my porch, clipboard in hand, lips curled in a smirk that told me she thought this was already won. She tapped her pen against the notice she'd just taped to my door, the sound sharp and deliberate, like a countdown. To her, my mother's handcrafted swing was nothing but an unapproved modification, a blemish in her perfectly uniform kingdom. You forgot one thing, Patricia, I said, keeping my tone even. I don't just live here. I build what people trust with their lives. Every bridge you've driven across in this county, I've signed off on. Her smirk faltered for the first time, and that half second of silence was all the confirmation I needed that the balance had shifted, even if just a fraction. If you've ever felt that surge of power when standing up to bullies, hit subscribe now. This showdown is about to become a masterclass in fighting back. I let the quiet hang, then continued, calm as the morning air. My name's Daniel Foster. I'm a structural engineer. My house isn't just a place to sleep, it's my family's story. And that swing? I placed my hand on the armrest, wood warm beneath my palm. It was built by my mother. It's older than half the bylaws you're trying to enforce. Her eyes flicked to the swing, then back to me. Calculating? She expected me to argue aesthetics or fees. She didn't expect me to bring in legacy, something she couldn't quantify or erase with a fine. That porch swing wasn't just furniture. It was a promise. My mother's final request before she passed in the hospital bed upstairs. Keep the swing, Danny. Don't let anyone take it down. The blue paint had chipped in places, faded with time, but every mark told a story. My daughter Emily learned to read there. My father once sat with me on that swing, mapping out constellations in the night sky. It wasn't about wood and bolts. It was about holding on to something no HOA president had the authority to erase. Losing it would mean betraying her memory, and I couldn't allow that. Patricia adjusted her glasses, trying to regain composure, but I could see the flicker of annoyance. She didn't like pushback, especially not when it came packaged with calm certainty. She muttered something about aesthetic standards and community compliance, but I barely heard her. My focus was on the promise I had made, the one thing that kept me grounded every time the HOA's threats grew louder. I stepped down from the porch so we were eye to eye. You think this is about fines. It isn't. It's about power, and you've chosen the wrong family to push. Emily's voice drifted from inside, calling for me before work. Patricia's eyes narrowed, irritation simmering, that her intimidation wasn't working. She shoved the clipboard back under her arm. 10 days, Daniel, or the board will have no choice but to escalate. She turned, heels clicking down the walkway. I stayed where I was, watching her retreat, feeling the wood of the swing steady against my hand. My pulse slowed. The game had started, and I already knew the rules she thought she controlled weren't the ones that would decide the outcome. Because I wasn't just a homeowner. I was an engineer who saw cracks before they spread, weaknesses before they collapsed. And Patricia's empire? It was built on shortcuts and arrogance. Structures like that don't stand for long. Where are you watching from? I whispered under my breath, too soft for her to hear. You just declared war on the wrong man. Patricia's heels clicked away, but I didn't go back inside. I locked the door, palmed the notice, and stepped into Maplewood's morning. Sprinklers hissed along the greenbelt. Wet grass cooled my ankles. Mulch and warming asphalt mixed in the air. If she wanted war, I'd start where her control felt strongest, out among neighbors who'd learned to keep their heads down. I crossed the common field toward the gazebo. A laminated board listed community standards in cheerful fonts that read like threats. A jogger glanced at the sleeve in my hand. Another fine, he muttered, not stopping. I kept moving, counting cameras and lampposts, noting angles and seams that didn't match the original pour. I didn't need a plan yet. I needed a pulse. Mrs. Green waved me over by the roses. Her shears flashed, petals fell like small flags. Trellis height again, she said. It's the same as last year. Her hands shook. I felt the post. Anchor bolts were seated. The base plate showed light corrosion, nothing structural. The violation was taste disguised as law. Kids on scooters rattled over a dip, where the clubhouse addition tied into old drainage. Careful on that bend, I called. The smallest kid wobbled, then shot on, laughing. The laugh snapped into quiet, heavier than it should have been. At the board, notices crowded each other. Shutter color, mailbox height, bird feeders. Someone had added a sticky note. Stop bullying us. It hung crooked, like a protest whisper. I photographed the board, not the messages, the sag. The roofline bowed between rafters. Not catastrophic, but not just time and weather. Daniel, Mr. and Mrs. Patel stood in the hedge shade, stroller between them. He showed me a bill. Late fees for lawn modeling. Our son's allergic to the spray, she said. We asked for an exception. The baby slept, cheeks blotched, heat pooled under my ribs. Rules were supposed to serve people. Here, people served rules. I looped the greenbelt and let Maplewood talk. Cut grass sweetened the air. A metallic tang drifted from the clubhouse HVAC cycling hard. A sun shield buzzed loose on one unit, a thin vibration. The condenser platforms looked too light for their spans. 2 by wear. 4 by would have been safer. From the path I couldn't measure, but I could judge. 2 board volunteers set folding chairs under the trees for an emergency compliance workshop. Their conversation carried. Patricia wants signatures by Friday, one said. She'll push liens if they resist. The word liens landed like gravel. People sign anything when someone whispers lien over their mortgage. At the cul-de-sac wall framing the clubhouse view, capstones stepped down unevenly, mortar smeared thin. Cosmetic fixes over structural problems. That was Maplewood now, perfect from a distance, compromised up close. Everything all right? Mrs. Green asked. I kept my eyes on the clubhouse. It will be, I said. Tell neighbors who've been harassed to document it. Photos, dates, exact wording. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for months. I crossed the field again, measuring my steps over the path dip. The subgrade felt spongy. Softness you recognize before the surface fails. Water traveled where it shouldn't, undermining the edge. A scooter clattered over it. The loose rattle jolted me. Structures whisper before they shout. On the sidewalk along Maplewood Lane, cars idled at the stop. Across from the clubhouse, a maintenance cart sat empty, hazard light blinking. Behind it, the addition stucco showed hairline cracks poking from a punched opening. The geometry told a story. Rushed framing, stressed spans, maybe unpermitted changes baked into the bones. I didn't smile at the all-new banner, edges frayed. I breathed and let the neighborhood's true conditions settle. Patricia's power was fear and paperwork. Mine was pattern recognition, sharpened into proof. A pickup rolled out from the clubhouse service drive. On the passenger side, Marcus Delgado stared through the glass, jaw tight, not seeing me. The truck stopped at the sign. He stepped down and stood in his driveway, eyes on the ground. He looked like a man carrying a secret. I headed toward him, the sprinkler hiss fading, earth giving way to dust as I left the greenbelt for the curb. Marcus stood at the edge of his driveway, arms folded tight, shoulders hunched as if he were bracing against weather no one else could feel. His eyes stayed on the pavement, watching nothing, while the subcontractor's truck disappeared down the street. I stopped a few steps away. He glanced up once, then back down, jaw clenched so hard the muscles jumped. Clubhouse work looks rushed, I said quietly. He didn't answer. His heel scuffed the concrete, slow, deliberate, the way a man moves when he wants to speak but knows silence is safer. Patricia's voice carried from 2 streets over, shrill and commanding at some poor neighbor. Marcus flinched, almost imperceptible, but I saw it. That was the fracture line. The loyal board member mask didn't fit him as tightly as Patricia thought. You saw the dip in the greenbelt path? I asked. Water's undermining it. Someone's going to get hurt. He lifted his head, eyes narrowing. Not denial, recognition. His lips parted, then closed again. His hands flexed against his folded arms. The truth pressed at him, visible in the twitch of his fingers. He wasn't ready to hand it over, but it was there. I leaned against the low wall by his driveway, not crowding him. I've seen shortcuts before. They don't stay hidden. They fail loud. He looked at me then. Really looked. Sweat stood on his forehead, though the air was cool. His chest rose and fell, uneven. You think she'll listen? His voice cracked at the end, softer than the man wanted it to be. "She won't," I said, "but the county will." He exhaled hard, shaking his head. His eyes flicked to his house. Curtains moved. A woman's shadow passed by. His wife, maybe. He shifted his weight, body angled toward the door, like he was calculating if speaking to me would put them at risk. From the porch swing back at my place, I could hear the faint creak whenever wind stirred. That sound was a tether. I wasn't asking him for loyalty, not yet. I was giving him a place to stand when Patricia's demands pushed him too far. A neighbor's dog barked. The air smelled of gasoline from the truck's exhaust fading down the block. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, leaving it ruffled. His mouth opened, then closed again, teeth grinding. The struggle was written all over his posture, shoulders forward, knees bent like a man under a load. "Just watch," I said, pushing off the wall. "You don't have to do anything now. But when you're ready, you'll know." He didn't follow, but his eyes tracked me as I walked away. Behind me, I heard the scrape of his shoe, the restless shifting of a man torn between obedience and conscience. That sound was more valuable than anything Patricia could write on paper. It meant he wasn't hers completely. Drop a like if you've ever wanted to stand up to unreasonable rules like this, and subscribe to see how this strategy plays out. As I reached the corner, I glanced back. Marcus stood exactly where I had left him, fists tightening and loosening, head tilted toward the clubhouse as though gravity pulled him there. I didn't need his confession yet. I just needed the crack to widen. And Patricia? She'd never notice. She believed fear held him in line, but fear fractures, pressure builds. When it does, the strongest dam is the one built on truth, not control. The swing waited at my porch, rocking gently, keeping time with my thoughts. I touched the worn armrest as I passed and whispered, "One ally at a time." Inside, Emily's badge lay hidden in her drawer, a secret Patricia would regret provoking. For now, the board had its rules, and I had something better, knowledge of where their weakest link stood, and the patience to let his struggle do the work for me. Patricia didn't waste time. By the next morning, a second notice was taped to my door, bright red ink scrawled across the top. Escalation. Fines doubled daily, interest threats added, and at the bottom, her neat signature like a personal brand. The paper crinkled in my fist as I tore it down. Emily stepped onto the porch behind me, uniform still hidden under her jacket, eyes sharp. "She's pushing harder," she said. The air smelled of cut grass and chlorine drifting from the clubhouse pool 2 blocks away. I carried the notice with me, each step measured as I crossed into the community center, where a glass-walled mailroom displayed rows of locked boxes and a bulletin board drowning in flyers. The fluorescent lights hummed, low and insistent, like the pressure Patricia was building against everyone here. On the board, half hidden behind a summer camp sign-up sheet, was the new directive. Mandatory junior membership pledge ceremony. All residents under 25 must attend. My jaw tightened. That explained Emily's stiff posture. Patricia had tried to humiliate her, treating her like a child, forcing a pledge to the HOA. Emily hadn't told me everything, but her silence said enough. Patricia was drawing lines not just against me, but against my daughter. I studied the posting carefully. The language was sloppy, citing bylaws that didn't exist in the original charter I'd reviewed months earlier. The formatting screamed rush job, as if Patricia had typed it herself the night before. My engineer's brain filed that detail away. Inconsistent documentation always revealed cracks. The mailroom door banged open. A man stormed in, waving his own notice. "They fined me for a cracked driveway." "That's HOA maintained concrete," his voice echoed, frustrated. Another resident, arms full of letters, muttered, "We got hit for improper shutters. Patricia approved those herself 3 years ago." The room buzzed with quiet fury. I pinned the red-marked notice to the corkboard next to theirs. For a moment, the wall looked less like community announcements and more like evidence. Each sheet represented a pressure point Patricia was exploiting. Each threat another attempt to break families into compliance. The door creaked again. Marcus appeared in the corner, carrying a stack of envelopes. He hesitated when he saw me. His eyes flicked from the board to the floor, the same conflict etched across his face as yesterday. He posted his letters silently, but his glance lingered on the red escalation stamp. His shoulders tensed, hands gripping the mail slots longer than necessary. He was watching, absorbing, but not ready to move. "Paper trails matter," I said quietly, not looking at him. He shifted but didn't respond, slipping out as quickly as he'd come. His silence wasn't weakness, it was survival. For now. I stepped back, letting the noise of complaints fill the room. Residents shuffled notices, compared fines, whispered about Patricia's threats. It wasn't organized yet, just raw frustration. But frustration had weight. Frustration could become pressure in the right hands. The fluorescent buzz pressed against my ears. I inhaled slow, grounding myself. My fingers brushed the smooth edges of the notice, and the sharp paper cut I hadn't noticed before stung. A reminder that even flimsy paper could bleed you if you weren't careful. Emily met me outside. She posted that pledge publicly. Everyone saw it. Her voice carried the steady tone of someone used to authority, though she kept her badge hidden. "She thinks humiliation will break us." "It won't," I said. "But it tells me something else." "What?" "She's overreaching. And overreach always leaves evidence." The sun dipped lower, shadows stretching across Maplewood's carefully trimmed lawns. Patricia believed she had momentum, that escalation would force me into a corner. But escalation cuts both ways. Push too hard, and you reveal the flaws in your own foundation. I folded the notice and slid it into my jacket. The swing waited at home, steady as ever. Patricia thought she'd written a new rule book. She hadn't realized I'd already begun writing my own. I left the mailroom with the red-inked notice burning in my pocket. The smell of chlorine drew me down Maplewood Lane, past trimmed hedges and freshly blown sidewalks. The clubhouse loomed ahead, its all-new banner flapping in the breeze. Kids splashed in the pool while their parents chatted on plastic chairs, oblivious to the structure above their heads. My mother used to say, "The things people ignore are the ones that break first." I slowed near the addition that wrapped around the clubhouse. The columns caught my eye first, spacing irregular, the loads off balance. Years of analyzing trusses and load paths sharpened my instincts. I didn't need a tape measure to know something wasn't right. Shadows told the story. Columns should have aligned with roof lines. Here, one shifted a foot off center. Someone had cheated symmetry, hoping no one would notice. But I noticed. A metallic hum pulsed from the HVAC units mounted along the wall. I crouched near the public path, pretending to tie my shoe. My fingertips brushed the concrete pad. Too thin, too light for the weight it carried. The vibration traveled into the ground, a shiver I felt in my knuckles. Improvised supports, cheap lumber where steel should have been. Voices drifted from the patio above. Patricia said it was inspected. "Doesn't feel safe to me." The words carried, thin but sharp, like the whine of the loose fan shield overhead. I looked up and saw it rattling, one bolt missing, the others straining. A kid shouted from the pool, laughter high and unbroken. My stomach tightened. This wasn't just about bylaws or aesthetics. This was safety. I pulled my phone from my pocket and snapped a photo, wide angle to capture spacing, shadow lines, and misaligned beams. Another from the sidewalk, time-stamped. The air tasted of metal and chlorine. Heat radiated off the concrete. I closed my eyes for a second, cataloging the sensory details the way I would on a bridge inspection. Smells, sounds, vibrations. Memory sharper than paper. The clubhouse door banged open. Patricia's voice cut through the noise, scolding a volunteer about folding chairs. She didn't see me from where I crouched, but her tone carried the same smug certainty as when she taped that notice to my door. She had no idea her pride project was the very thing that would undo her. Marcus stepped out behind her, holding a clipboard too tightly. He glanced my way, our eyes locked. For a moment his mask slipped. Tension, regret, something raw. He looked away quickly, retreating into the building. Patricia followed, heels striking like hammers. I stood, brushed off my hands, and walked the perimeter. Stucco cracks spidered out from a window corner, radiating stress where framing had shifted. Each mark told a story of corners cut. I whispered it to myself, as if writing a report. She saved money, not structure. A sprinkler sputtered nearby, mist cooling my arm. I slipped my phone into my pocket, heart steady. This was the beginning of the evidence trail. Not papers in a garage, not whispers of unfair treatment, but steel and wood and concrete speaking louder than Patricia's clipboard. I turned back toward the street. A little girl skipped along the sidewalk, hair dripping from the pool. She darted past the HVAC units without looking. The vibration from the pads echoed through the ground into my boots. I clenched my jaw. This wasn't theory. If those supports failed, people got hurt. The swing at home waited, creaking in the wind, a reminder of the promise I carried. But here, in the shadow of Patricia's prize clubhouse, I had found my leverage. By the time I walked back to my street, the smell of chlorine had faded, replaced by cut grass and the faint sweetness of honeysuckle drifting from a neighbor's fence. The porch swing swayed gently in the evening breeze, its creak steady, grounding. Emily sat on the steps, jacket pulled tight, eyes sharp as she scanned the cul-de-sac. "You were at the clubhouse," she said, not a question. "I saw enough," I replied. "Shortcuts everywhere, supports too light, cracks spreading. It won't last." She nodded once, lips pressed thin. For a moment I thought we'd have a quiet night, just the swing and the fading light. But then, Patricia's SUV rolled into view, headlights glaring even though the sun hadn't set. She parked crooked in front of my curb, door slamming like a warning shot. Patricia marched across the lawn, clipboard gone, replaced by something darker. Her hand gripped the outline of a pistol at her hip. My breath caught. Emily rose slowly, calm but coiled. Patricia's eyes locked on my daughter. "You think you can defy me? You'll sign the pledge or you'll regret it." Her voice shook with rage, not control. The gun cleared leather. For a heartbeat, the world froze. The porch creak, the cicadas, even the wind. Emily didn't flinch. Her training showed in the steadiness of her stance, the way her hands remained visible but ready. I stepped forward, heart pounding in my throat, palms slick. "Patricia," I said evenly, "put it away. This isn't enforcement. It's a crime." Neighbors' blinds shifted, silhouettes gathering in windows. The swing swayed harder, as if echoing the storm building in my chest. Patricia's hand trembled. For all her bluster, she wasn't in control. She was desperate. Emily's voice was calm, even gentle. "You don't want to do this." She didn't flash her badge. Not yet. Timing mattered. Exposure now would endanger the bigger play. Patricia's jaw clenched. "I run this neighborhood. You'll learn your place." I took a step closer, slow, measured. My mind cataloged everything. The distance to the curb, the angle of her wrist, the safety off. Years of studying failures, bridges, walls, structures, had taught me that collapse always begins at the weakest joint. Patricia's was fear. "Drop it," I said again. My voice carried. A curtain slid open wider across the street. Patricia noticed. Her control slipped. With a hiss, she shoved the pistol back into her waistband and stormed off, muttering about consequences, about finishing this. Her SUV roared away, taillights streaking red. Silence settled heavy, broken only by the rhythmic creak of the swing. Emily exhaled slowly. She crossed the line. I nodded, fists unclenching. Now it's more than fines. It's personal. And that means we move. The swing rocked, steady, as if reminding me of the promise I'd made. I brushed my fingers along its armrest, wood warm beneath my touch. Patricia thought fear would break us. She didn't understand. Fear only sharpened my resolve. I looked at Emily. It's time to turn what I saw into proof. Her eyes flicked to the neighbors' windows, where shadows still lingered. Witnesses. Silent for now. But they'd remember. I stepped inside, grabbed my notebook, and began sketching the columns, the spacing, the cracks. My pencil moved fast, each line a piece of evidence. The gun changed the stakes. This wasn't just about a swing or a notice anymore. Patricia had escalated to threats with deadly force, and that meant I had no choice but to respond with everything I knew. The night air pressed against the windows as I drew, the swing's steady creak carrying through the walls. That sound wasn't just memory anymore. It was a call to action. Patricia had chosen her weapon. I would choose mine. Truth written in concrete, steel, and code. The night after Patricia pulled that gun, sleep didn't come easy. The porch swing kept moving in the breeze, creak after creak, like a metronome to my thoughts. By morning, I had sketches spread across the table, every misaligned column and rattling HVAC unit documented. But raw notes weren't enough. I needed inside confirmation, something only someone on the board could give me, and I knew exactly who carried that weight. I found Marcus at the corner cafe 2 blocks over, tucked into a booth that gave him a clear view of the door. He looked like he hadn't slept either. A half-empty cup of black coffee sat untouched, steam long gone. He kept his eyes down when I slid into the seat across from him. "Daniel," he said, voice low, almost swallowed by the cafe's hum. "You shouldn't be here." "Neither should you," I replied. "But here we are." His hand tightened around the ceramic mug until I thought it might crack. He glanced at the door, then at the waitress wiping down tables. His shoulders slumped, the facade of a loyal board member crumbling under the weight of what he knew. "She's gone too far," I continued, brandishing a gun at my daughter. "Posting fake bylaws. And those clubhouse supports? They're failing." At that, his eyes snapped up, guilt written plain. His lips parted, then closed, like he was wrestling with a confession he'd buried too long. He rubbed his temple and leaned in, lowering his voice. "You don't understand." She pushed the board to approve a retrofit. Said we needed it done quick to keep insurance low. She brought in Bolton's crew. No license, no inspections. Half the budget vanished before concrete even poured. The name hit me like a hammer. Ray Bolton, known for cutting corners, for cashing checks, and leaving structures to rot. "Unlicensed work in a public facility," I murmured. "That explains everything I saw." Marcus swallowed hard. His fingers drummed the table, each tap uneven. "I told her it wasn't right. But she threatened to ruin me. Said she'd lean my house, drag my family through it. I couldn't." His voice broke. He looked at his hands, ashamed. I softened my tone. "You're not the first she's trapped, but you can be the first to step out. You've got the dates, the approvals, the subcontractor's name. That's the fracture that brings her down." He shook his head, sweat beading his brow. "If she finds out I told you—" "She won't," I cut in. "Not until it's too late." For a long moment, silence stretched. The hiss of the espresso machine, the clink of a spoon in a glass, small noises filled the space while Marcus battled himself. Finally, he slid a folded napkin across the table, scrawled in rushed handwriting, contractor's initials, dates of work, amounts approved. His hand trembled as he let go. "You didn't get that from me," he whispered. I tucked it into my jacket, heart steady. This was the missing piece. My professional eye had spotted the flaws, but now I had proof of who caused them and when. It turned speculation into evidence. "Marcus," I said quietly, "you did the right thing." He shook his head, again, eyes glassy. "I just hope it's not too late." When I stepped back into the morning sun, the air felt different, warmer, heavier. I carried not just sketches and photos, but insider confirmation. Patricia thought fear would keep Marcus silent. She hadn't counted on conscience. The swing would stay. And now, with Bolton's name in my pocket, Patricia's empire had its first real crack. I spent the rest of that day at my office downtown, blueprints stacked on one side of the desk, my laptop humming with open code manuals. Sunlight cut through the blinds in slanted stripes, warming the paper beneath my hands. Marcus's napkin sat beside me, his shaky handwriting almost vibrating with risk. Ray Bolton. Dates, payments, approvals. It was enough to build a framework, but if I wanted the county to listen, I needed more than instinct and scraps. I needed verification. I dialed Laura Kim, a licensed inspector I'd worked with on bridge projects. She picked up on the second ring, voice clipped but friendly. "Foster, haven't heard from you in a while. I've got a situation in Maplewood Estates," I said. "Clubhouse retrofit. Rumor is it was done without permits. My eyes tell me it's unsafe. Columns misaligned, HVAC pads underbuilt, stucco cracking. Bolton's crew did it." There was a pause, then a low whistle. "Bolton? You're kidding. He's not even licensed in this county anymore." "I'm not kidding. And the HOA president's using it as her showcase project. She sighed. Papers shuffled on her end of the line. If I come out, it has to be clean. Photos, measurements, time stamped. I can't move on gossip. I've already started, I said. But I'll get you what you need. We'll keep it above board. Her tone shifted, harder now. Then listen. Document every crack, every spacing error. Pull the county's permit portal. See if anything was filed. My bet, nothing. The line clicked dead. She'd given me the map. It was my job to draw it. I leaned back, chair creaking. The office smelled of ink and dust. Old files stacked high against the wall. I pulled up the county's online system, typed in Maplewood Estates Clubhouse Retrofit. The screen spun, then spit back emptiness. No permits, no inspection records, just a gaping void where legality should have been. I printed screenshots, filed them with Marcus's napkin, and added my sketches. The package was starting to take shape, a technical report layered with evidence, each piece pointing to negligence. But reports were more than facts. They were narratives, built on sequence and cause. If I wanted the county to act, my story had to be airtight. The hum of the HVAC above my office reminded me of the vibration I'd felt in the clubhouse pad. I sketched it quickly. Beam span here, load path there, arrows showing stress distribution. Numbers lined the margin, calculations I'd done 100 times. Each told the same: truth, overstress, failure, waiting. A text buzzed my phone. Emily, Patricia's been circling the house again. Careful. I rubbed my temples. Patricia thought fines and intimidation would corner me, but she didn't understand engineers. Pressure didn't crush us. It clarified the load path. I opened a new folder on my laptop. Maplewood Unsafe Retrofit. Inside, I dropped photos, Marcus's note, screenshots of missing permits. Each file labeled, each time stamped, clean, admissible. The light outside shifted orange, shadows stretching across my office floor. I pulled a fresh sheet and drafted the report header. Preliminary observations of structural and safety deficiencies, Maplewood Estates Clubhouse. Beneath it, my name, credentials, license number. Authority Patricia couldn't match with her clipboard and threats. I thought of the swing at home, rocking in the evening air. That promise wasn't abstract anymore. It was tied directly to the safety of the entire neighborhood. Patricia had tried to make this about power. I was making it about protection. As the office grew darker, I stacked the files neatly, ready for review. Tomorrow I'd take measurements again with Laura at my side, every observation sharpened into evidence. Patricia's empire looked solid from the street, but I'd seen the cracks, and now I had the tools to prove it. The next morning, I started early. The air carried a chill, and dew slicked the sidewalk as I walked back toward the clubhouse with a camera bag slung across my shoulder. My sketches and Marcus's note were strong, but Laura's words echoed in my head. Photos, measurements, time stamped. Evidence had to be undeniable. I kept to the public right-of-way, lens trained on every flaw. The columns again, off-center, shadow lines telling the story. I zoomed tight, caught the cracked stucco radiating from the window frame. A shutter click punctuated the silence. Each frame was tagged with GPS and time. Not my opinion, not my memory, hard data. Neighbors noticed. Mrs. Green leaned over her trellis, clutching pruning shears. "Daniel, you're not afraid she'll come after you for this?" "She already has," I said. "But fear doesn't hold up in court. Evidence does." Her eyes widened, then softened. She nodded once, lips tight. "Then make it count." Kids shouted from the pool deck, their laughter blending with the low mechanical drone of the HVAC units. I crouched at the edge of the sidewalk, microphone clipped to the camera, picking up the rattle of the loose shield. I placed my hand on the concrete pad again. Vibration buzzed into my palm. I filmed it, narration quiet but firm. Improper support, potential hazard under load. From the corner of my eye, I spotted Marcus across the street. He didn't approach, but he watched, arms crossed, head bent slightly as if committing every step to memory. His presence was silent approval. By midday, I had dozens of images. Still, something nagged. Permits. I pulled out my phone, logged into the county portal again. Nothing. Not a single submission for retrofit. Screenshots captured, filed. I added voice notes to myself. Absence of record supports unpermitted construction claim. A delivery truck rolled up with supplies, boxes marked with hardware store logos. I caught footage as the driver hauled them inside. The boxes bore consumer-grade labels, not professional stock. Patricia's flagship renovation was built on shortcuts at every level. Later, I walked the perimeter where the greenbelt path dipped. My boots sank slightly into soft subgrade near the joint. I filmed the scooter track gouged into the edge, my voice steady. Water undermining soil, inadequate drainage, risk of collapse. A boy on a skateboard zipped past, wobbling but grinning. His wheel snagged the dip, and he almost toppled. My chest tightened, but he caught himself and sped off. Proof didn't need imagination. It was right there in motion. I headed home as the sun tilted west. Inside, I uploaded every file into the new folder, organizing meticulously. Subfolders labeled structural, HVAC, stucco, drainage, and permits. Each image renamed with date and time. I drafted a chart mapping observation to code violation. It was methodical, clinical, the way I'd prepared evidence for court before. Emily leaned over my shoulder, badge tucked out of sight. "That's airtight," she said. "They can't ignore it." "They'll try," I answered. "But when the inspector sees it herself, Patricia's house of cards falls." The porch swing creaked in the evening wind. I let the sound settle me. Patricia thought her fines and her threats would break me. Instead, they'd given me the focus to build something unshakable. The report wasn't finished yet, but the foundation was there. Tomorrow I'd file it, step into the county offices with credentials and proof. Patricia had forced escalation. Now I was answering with structure, sequence, and undeniable truth. The next morning, I carried a leather folder under my arm, every page of evidence organized and stamped with my credentials. The county building department sat in a beige brick building downtown, glass doors smudged from constant traffic. Inside, the air smelled of paper, toner, and disinfectant. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. My boots echoed against the tile as I walked toward the intake desk. The clerk glanced up, bored until I laid the folder down. The embossed seal of my license caught the light. Her eyes sharpened. "Inspection request?" "Preliminary report," I said, voice steady. "Unpermitted retrofit at Maplewood Estates. Immediate safety concerns." She flipped through the first pages. Photos of misaligned columns, stucco cracks, screenshots of missing permits. Her eyebrows rose just slightly. She stamped the cover sheet and slid a carbon copy back to me. "An inspector will be assigned. You'll be contacted within 48 hours. 48 hours. Long enough for Patricia to think she still had control. Short enough that her empire's clock had started ticking. When I stepped back into the sunlight, the weight on my chest lifted. Filing the report wasn't the end. It was the beginning of official oversight. Patricia's threats had been paper tigers. Now the county's authority was in play. On the drive back, my phone buzzed. A message from the HOA board. Emergency compliance hearing, scheduled for Friday night. Attendance mandatory. Patricia was accelerating. She wanted to corner me before the county arrived. I parked in front of my house. The swing moved in the breeze, creak steady, a reminder of the promise that started all this. Emily sat on the steps, scrolling her phone. She looked up. "They're calling a hearing?" "Friday," I confirmed. "She wants control back before the inspector shows." Emily's eyes narrowed. "She doesn't know she's already lost." Inside, I spread the stamped copy on the kitchen table. The red ink from Patricia's notices seemed pale compared to the county seal. This wasn't just my word against hers anymore. It was official. I texted Laura Kim, filed, expect contact soon. She replied within minutes. "Good. I'll make sure it doesn't sit on a desk." Evening settled over Maplewood. Neighbors watered lawns, sprinklers clicking in rhythm. Marcus walked by, hands in his pockets. He slowed at my driveway, glanced at the swing, then at me. No words, just a nod. The kind of nod that meant he knew something was shifting, even if he couldn't say it aloud yet. I stepped onto the porch, sat on the swing, and let it carry me back and forth. The wood creaked, the chains hummed. My mother's hands had built this. Patricia thought she could erase it with fines, with threats, even with a gun. But she didn't understand the power of structure, of sequence, of patience. Friday night, the hearing would come. Neighbors would gather. Patricia would posture, wave her clipboard, spit rules like gospel. But this time, I wouldn't stand alone. I'd walk in with evidence, with authority behind me. And when the inspector arrived, whether Friday or after, the whole neighborhood would see the cracks for themselves. The sun dipped below the rooftops. Porch lights flicked on across the street. I whispered to the swing as if my mother could still hear me. It's almost over. Friday night arrived heavy, the air thick with humidity and tension. The HOA meeting hall buzzed with voices even before I stepped inside. Folding chairs scraped against the tile floor, neighbors filled every row, and the smell of sweat and paper coffee cups hung sharp. Patricia stood at the front with her clipboard raised like a shield, pearls gleaming under fluorescent lights. Her smile was brittle, stretched too wide. "Order!" she barked, slamming the gavel on the table. The sound cracked through the room, but conversations didn't die immediately. People were restless, tired of notices and threats. I walked down the center aisle, leather folder in hand, the weight of my report grounding every step. Eyes followed me, some hopeful, some wary, all waiting. Patricia's gaze locked on me, fury sparking. "Mr. Foster, you're here to address your violations, not to grandstand." I stopped at the front, set my folder on the table, and opened it slowly so the county seal was visible. A murmur rippled through the crowd. "This isn't about a swing," I said. "It's about safety. It's about what your dues have been funding." Gasps cut through the air when I held up photos. Columns misaligned, stucco cracks spreading like spider webs, HVAC pads vibrating loose. I laid out the missing permits, each screenshot projected on the wall with the overhead. This clubhouse retrofit wasn't inspected. It wasn't permitted, and it wasn't safe. Patricia's smile faltered. She grabbed the gavel again. "Lies! Slander! He's not an authority." "I am," I cut in, my voice steady. "Licensed structural engineer. 15 years building bridges you drive across every day. My license number's on the first page of this report. This isn't speculation, it's fact." The room erupted. Neighbors shouted over one another. "I knew it! She lied! My kids play there!" Chairs screeched as people stood, waving their own notices in the air. Patricia pounded the gavel, but the noise drowned her out. Marcus rose slowly in the second row. His hands shook, but his voice carried clear. "He's telling the truth." I was there when the board voted. Patricia pushed us to hire Bolton's crew, unlicensed, uninspected. She threatened anyone who disagreed. The crowd gasped again. Patricia whirled on him, face red, words tumbling out too fast. "Marcus, you traitor!" But the tide had turned. Residents shouted back at her, some demanding refunds, others calling for her resignation. The walls of order she'd built crumbled under the weight of voices finally unafraid. Then the doors at the back opened. Laura Kim entered with 2 county inspectors, clipboards in hand, badges pinned. The room went silent. Patricia's face drained of color. One inspector spoke. "We received a report. This facility is under immediate review. Effective tonight, the clubhouse is closed until further notice." The gavel slipped from Patricia's hand and clattered on the table. The sound was final, hollow. Neighbors crowded me, shaking my hand, thanking me. Marcus stood apart, shoulders lighter, eyes wet. Emily slipped in from the side, her presence steady, silent support. She didn't need to flash her badge. Tonight wasn't about hidden power. It was about truth standing taller than fear. I looked around the hall, the same room Patricia had ruled with fines and threats. Now it was filled with people raising their voices, not cowering. The shift was palpable, a structure rebuilt on foundation instead of fear. Patricia tried to speak again, but her words drowned in the swell of neighbors demanding answers. For the first time, her clipboard looked flimsy, useless. Her control was gone, stripped bare in front of the very people she'd lorded over. I gathered my folder, closed it gently, and looked back once more. The swing at home waited, rocking in the night breeze. The promise I'd made was nearly kept. The night after the hearing, Maplewood Estates felt different. Quiet, but not the heavy silence Patricia had ruled with. This was lighter, like the pause after a storm. The clubhouse sat dark, chain across the doors, yellow county tape fluttering in the breeze. For years it had been her monument of control. Now it was her downfall, marked for inspection and remediation she couldn't cover up. I sat on the porch swing, chains creaking in rhythm with the cicadas. Emily joined me, jacket off, badge still tucked away, but her presence stronger than ever. She looked out over the cul-de-sac. "She won't come back from this," she said. "She'll try," I replied, "but fear only works until people see through it." Last night they saw the memory of the hearing played in my head. Neighbors shouting, Marcus finally standing tall, the inspectors shutting everything down. Patricia's clipboard hitting the table had echoed like a verdict. She'd lost not just power, but the illusion that she was untouchable. Across the street, Mrs. Green waved from her rose trellis, her smile wide for the first time in months. The Patels pushed their stroller along the sidewalk, no longer glancing nervously at their mailbox. Even Marcus walked past, head high, though his hands still trembled slightly when he raised them in greeting. His confession had cost him, but it had freed the whole neighborhood. I leaned back, wood warm against my shoulders. This was never just about fines. It was about the swing, about Mom's promise. But it turned into something bigger. Emily nodded, gaze softening. "You protected more than a swing. You protected the whole community." The inspector's report would come soon. Repairs would be mandated. Patricia would face charges for the gun, maybe even civil suits for negligence. The board would have to reorganize, this time with accountability. The cracks in her foundation weren't just physical. They were moral. And once exposed, nothing could hold. The swing rocked gently beneath us. The same swing my mother had built with her own hands, the same swing Patricia had tried to erase. It stayed, unbroken, a symbol that family mattered more than control. I thought back to that promise whispered in a hospital room. "It stays, Danny." And it had. Because promises aren't just words. They're anchors, stronger than fear, heavier than fines, sharper than threats. Emily smiled, pushing the swing lightly with her foot. "Think anyone else in the county's ever taken down an HOA with a porch swing?" I laughed, low and steady. "Not like this." The night was warm, stars breaking through the haze above the roofs. For the first time in months, I breathed without pressure on my chest. Patricia's reign was over, and Maplewood Estates finally belonged to its residents again. If you want more stories of homeowners standing up to HOA tyranny, hit subscribe right now, share your story in the comments, and let me know where you're watching from.